Hey friends, this is Ms. Stapp with an overview of D1 and the assignment for today. All right, so D1 says design detailed and relevant testing methods which generate data to measure the success of the solution. Today we're designing the testing methods. Then before next class, you will actually have to run the tests. That is homework, but today you will be creating the testing plan and uploading those tables of your testing plan to ManageBack. Before next class, you'll be running the tests, and it's due as a PFL at the beginning of class, so we can use the data that you've gathered in order to move forward. The objective is that you should understand how criteria is used throughout the design cycle. So you are not creating new criteria or a new specification list. You're actually going back and capturing it, and we're going to use that, paste it probably on your work today so that you can make sure that you test each of the criteria you created. That said, that doesn't mean you can't add new criteria, and that doesn't mean each criteria can be tested for in each of these testing methods. We'll talk about that, but do understand that you should be very familiar with where to get your specification list and that we use it again and again. Again, today is not the test. You'll be doing that as homework before next time. I've given you 5 testing methods to choose from. I need you to understand that surveys and interviews are not testing methods. Those are ways to capture data from your testing method. But the 5 methods you have to choose from are user observation, user trial, expert appraisal, compare with an existing solution, and performance testing. I'm not sure that user trial would be the best testing method for you, but I did want to introduce it. User trial is where somebody interacts with your product and you do not ask any questions and you remove yourself from where they are actually using the product and you just take observations. You just write down your own personal observations about how the user interacts. This can really only be done when you have a full solution that is working. So if you only have a model and so forth, this one is not going to be appropriate for you. And remember that the information you gain is only going to be the experimenter, that's you, the experimenter's observation. One that I would recommend that you use is user trial, because you can show them a non-working model and talk to them about the function and get feedback. So you must have at least 3 users, and this is great to set up a focus group, and you could even do this on a Zoom call and have your people that your users use your product and then immediately can follow up with an interview. And that's why we do this plan, so that we understand exactly what we want to ask in our follow-up. So user trial is one I recommend. Expert appraisal you may conduct only if you have an expert. And an expert has to have a background in the health field that you chose, or it can be somebody that is an expert in the solution that you made. So if you have an expert, it is wonderful to get that interview in after they see your product or they use your product and get that information, because that's usually of a more thorough or a higher quality than just your users out there. All right, another one I recommend that you use if you can is compare with existing solution, and you should be able to do this even if you don't have the existing solution. You can go online just like you did in order to examine existing products, take an image and look at them side by side. Again, I've created a table here. You can see the existing product on the left, and on the right I have my product. And we're going to go down the criteria and test each. One question that came up, can you compare against a product that you already looked at in order to get information about what your product could be like? Yes, this can be one of the products that you already visited. And then finally is performance testing. Again, this test is really only appropriate if you have a full functioning solution, and then you're going to test it against how it is supposed to work. And this is rigorous testing, almost and sometimes to the point of breaking the model or product. So consider if you have another, if you're going to run this test, you might want to have a backup in order to be able to complete the test with your users. There are some videos I've included that will help you understand how this testing looks in the real world and might help you design your test. You're going to tell me the difference between the qualitative and quantitative data in your test, and potentially you are looking for both. Now, I understand that you know based on your chemistry classes, you have a good idea that the quantitative has to do with numbers. 2 out of 3 people said it met the criteria. And then that qualitative data is more details, the descriptions, opinions, and so forth. And yes, it can be a combination of both when you do your testing. In fact, that is what I often recommend. In this table, you will also define the objective of your testing. So your testing is probably to determine whether you met criteria goals or if there's something wrong, why it didn't meet the criteria goals, to get customer feedback on things that were criteria embedded in your testing and that you really need to know whether or not the consumer understands or their opinions on, and potentially the performance of your product. So I'm going to quickly show you based on a hypothetical product out there, and I'm going to put hypothetical, if I could spell it. That's supposed to say hypothetical product. And I'm going to say what testing method. This is important that you let me know which testing method you're using. Again, you have to use 2. And from that list of 5. So first I'm going to drop my specification here. It can be just the criteria. I don't need the research names and I don't need to know exactly why, but it might be really, you might look at the criteria if you can't remember why this was important. Why did you create this criteria? Because that will only be important as you continue to fill out this table. So I said for my first criteria, it must be blue. Remember you had 8 criteria. And then describe how you would test for the product against your criteria and get feedback. And this again is setting up your test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this trial, and then afterward I intend to interview users and ask them this question. What color was the product predominantly? And how did this color make you feel? It will be quantitative and qualitative because potentially I'll have 2 out of 3 people said the predominant color was blue. Maybe one didn't realize that. And then I also will have that qualitative. How did this make you feel? What is the objective of the test? The objective for me is to understand if the users recognize the main color, and does the feedback indicate if that color was calming, because that was why I decided that this was an important criteria. Based on my research, blue had the most calming effect on people, and I wanted to incorporate that into my design. Why is it relevant? You might get a little confused and it might overlap between the objective and why it is relevant, but try to explain to me. And I've given you right here, it says, in other words, you created this criteria because research shows it was important. State why it was important and what the results might indicate. So it's important to understand if the color evoked the intended emotion, or if I need to consider adding more of this color to the product because they didn't recognize it as the primary color, or if I need to change the color because it didn't evoke the kind of mood that I was hoping it would evoke. How will you capture this test? Now, this is not my evidence at this point. This is just you creating a plan for doing that and having that in place. I'm going to interview afterward, after the trial, and then I'm going to record this on my phone. That's what I've decided to do. Of course, you have to remember that you have to ask permission and record it. And this could be set up in a Zoom call with all 3 people, and you're showing your product, and then you're recording that Zoom call so that you can go back to that information later. This could be just notes that you're taking as you run the focus group. However you want to do it, you're going to let me know your intention. And this is probably the same for this whole test. That makes it easy. And then this is the homework. You actually run the test, and you'll pop your results in this table. Okay? Again, at this point, all I need is everything in gray. You're going to run 2. In order to make above a 3-4, you do have to do 2 testing methods. And I wanted to let you know at the bottom it says other things that you need to test. So I've got my criteria here, but potentially there are things now that we've moved along that you know or would like to test. Please add that. It is important. Even though it wasn't original criteria, we continue to evolve and understand this product as we move along. And now things might have popped up that you understand as being really important to success of your product, and there's definitely a space for them. So you can add as many rows as you need to these tables. You're going to find these tables in your formative section. They should look just like this. Remember the light blue on the right, that is homework, and you need to do that outside of this class period. For today, you are uploading to ManageBack these tables, 2 tables, and everything in gray. Email me if you have any questions, and I hope your testing before the next class is super fun, and I will see you next time.